What would you do if your grandma left you $1 million? Would you spend it on something ridiculous, invest it safely, and live off the residuals? Ask your mom where the hell grandma got $1 million from and why she was hoarding it for her entire life? Yeah, that's right, buddy. Grandma's got lots of secrets. In a lot of ways, Cartmanland is a very simple premise for an episode of a TV show, but maybe sometimes simple is good because, in my opinion, this is one of the best episodes of South Park of all time. I've actually been wanting to do a video on this episode for a little while now, and I figured that since Fortnite recently had Cartmanland in its South Park collaboration, it was finally time to do it. Now you know how this series goes. I go through a major chunk of the episode with you guys, I overanalyze the ever-living crap out of it, we laugh, we cry, and most of you have a good time. So let's just skip this intro, get to the part we're all waiting for, and break down this perfect episode.
And a loving grandmother.
Mom, it's 3:30. This is taking up my whole Saturday.
Shh, Pumpkin, it's almost over.
Why could the funeral have been on a school day?
Well, would you look at the clock? It's time for me to gush about Cartman's character writing, because once again, they're painting a perfect picture of the type of person he is. He's at his grandma's funeral, surrounded by family members who are crying and mourning her death, and all he cares about is that he's bored on a Saturday. So right off the bat, any first-time viewers of the show will immediately understand that Cartman is extremely selfish, and that he's severely lacking in empathy. He doesn't have a normal response to a family member dying, which is important to establish for two reasons. One, it's essential to Kyle, because for Kyle's storyline to make sense, we need to see Cartman's morality as like a reference point. And two is that it's actually setting up a twist that kicks off the rest of the episode, because even though Cartman is the only family member that doesn't seem to want to be there, he ends up being the only family member to receive his grandma's most significant piece of inheritance.
To my grandson Eric, you were always my favorite fat little man, my perfect round little pudding piler. For you, Eric, I leave from my life savings the sum of $1 million to be transferred to you immediately.
I love that Eric's grandma calls him fat as a term of endearment. Like, this is the only place where you're gonna hear round little pudding piler as a compliment. And I'd act surprised by it, I would. But I mean, look at Cartman's family. Plus, are we really gonna be surprised at grandma's weird choice of words when she named her firstborn son Stinky? Nah, I think it's safe to assume that Cartman's family is a little backwards on the social norms. Now, obviously, Eric inheriting $1 million is the big twist that I mentioned that kicks off this first act, which hits extra hard after getting multiple beats of him complaining about how the funeral and the will reading process is eating into his weekend time. But since we've already established that the episode does a great job of introducing Cartman to new viewers, which also does a nice job of setting up this twist, I want to talk about how this moment hits extra hard for fans who had already been keeping up with the show when this episode first aired. Back in season 4, one of the few continuous threads that kept popping up across various episodes was that Cartman was always trying to get rich. Whether it was the Tooth Fairy episode, the fake church preacher episode, the quintuplets episode, Finger Bang, the boys were always looking for ways to make $1 million or $10 million or get a Sega Dreamcast because they had amazing taste in video games. And these initiatives were almost always led by Cartman, especially the fake preacher one, which he planned all on his own without the help of Stan or Kyle.
And then we can make $10 million. Look, the Tooth Fairy thing didn't work, the boy band thing didn't last, so I tried this route.
So for Cartman to suddenly actually get $1 million like that was just an insanely unexpected direction for the show to go in. Especially since at this point in its run, South Park had never really introduced concepts like that. Because I mean, back in those early days, as absurd as the show could be, the kids were always still very much normal kids. I mean, they went on wacky adventures and stuff, but they never transcended that child role, you know? They got grounded, they had no money. There was a certain level of restriction on how they interacted with the world. So Cartman getting $1 million was about as out of left field as it gets. But hey, don't take my word for it. Just look at how Cartman reacts to this moment. Yeah, that scream says more than I ever could. Now, a plot device like this, where a character suddenly gets a bunch of money, it's obviously been done in other shows before. In fact, even in the director's commentary for this episode, they were worried that the episode would come off as generic.
We almost didn't make this episode because we were afraid. We're like, well, there's not enough going on. It was like basically the plot line of Cartman inherits $1 million and so he buys his own theme park. We're like, that's cliche, that's staid, that's like an old plot line. And we're just like, that's just so basic and easy.
But I think that, at least for this first act, what really makes it work as well as it does is not the concept of someone getting $1 million, it's Cartman. Because unlike most main characters, Cartman is not a very good person. In fact, that's the appeal behind his character. He's narcissistic, he's selfish, he's manipulative. The show does a great job of creating this perfect little monster of a kid in the episodes that lead up to this point, especially since this comes after the Scott Tenorman episode. So as the audience, we're essentially set up to think of him as a villain. And that's exactly what makes this premise so enticing. We want to see what Cartman is going to do with the $1 million because we know it's going to be f***ed up somehow. And that almost gives this episode a what if the bad guys won type of vibe to it. It's just so immediately fun, and it just injects the whole start of this episode with a momentum that carries through all the way to the end of this thing with damn near perfect pacing.
Excuse me, son, I'm an investment broker. I can help you invest that money.
Nuh-uh, I'm spending it. What the hell are you doing, fat ass? Not much, just taking my $1 million out of the bank.
I love that a bunch of people are literally following Eric around with his money. It really adds to that small town charm, you know? Because I'm sure for them, this is probably the most exciting thing they've ever seen. $1 million cash? I mean, I'd be pretty excited about that too. But the fact that it's already making the gossip rounds with the news spreading through town, it's a nice touch. Makes the South Park world feel more real and lived in. Though I gotta say, kinda surprised that the mayor didn't show up to try and convince Eric to spend his money on the town. Would have been a very in-character thing for her to do, but that's just my opinion. Though I guess it wouldn't really add much to the episode, and they only have so much time to work with anyways. But also, speaking of time to work with, some of you may have noticed that I skipped a scene, and I just want to say that I really wanted to include that clip of Stan and Kyle blowing up the Jennifer Lopez toy, because I think it's hilarious, and I also wanted to mention how I miss when the South Park kids played with actual toys. But let's be real, it's not really that relevant to the episode commentary here. So yeah, we had to skip that scene unfortunately. But what really matters is that Stan and Kyle are here now, and their reaction to Cartman's money is what sets up the most important part of this episode. Kyle's storyline. Yeah, that's right. Kyle's storyline is the most important part of this episode, not Cartman's, but we'll get into that a little later, don't you worry. For now, all you need to know is that the setup here is perfect. Cartman walking with his money, only stopping for a brief moment to rub it in Stan and Kyle's face, and then continuing onward like they weren't even there. It perfectly mirrors how this entire first act is gonna go. Cartman is an unstoppable force, and Kyle is helpless to do anything about it.
Your grandma left it to you. You didn't earn it. Didn't earn it. What about all the years I spent making grandma like me? All the wet, spit-filled kisses I put up with. The constant smell of aspirin and pee. Don't tell me I didn't earn it, you son of a bitch.
There's so much I love about this little interaction here. Kyle is the moral center of the friend group, and so he rightfully calls out Cartman when he claims that he earned the $1 million. But Cartman isn't a normal kid. Like I said earlier, when Cartman wins, it's kind of like when the bad guys win. There's nothing nice or wholesome about it. So when he starts going on about the wet kisses and the smell of aspirin and pee, he genuinely sees that as earning his inheritance. To him, it's no different than having to sit through a funeral on a Saturday. It's a waste of his time unless he's getting something out of it. And like, yeah, I wouldn't want to smell aspirin or pee either, but that's just something that you put up with because you love your grandparents and they love you. Like, keep in mind that Cartman's grandmother wasn't a mean or abusive person. She's not like Butter's grandma or something. We saw her back in season 2. She was pretty nice to the boys and her family members. Actually, come to think of it, Cartman only cared about presents from her in that episode as well. That's some good consistency. But yeah, what really sells the scene for me here is the look on Kyle's face as Cartman says all this. Because the way he flips from angry to shocked and then backs his head up as Cartman gets more intense really highlights the insane levels of contrast between the two of them. Kyle is so appalled by what Cartman is saying that he's literally stunned by it. He can't believe what he's hearing. He can't believe how heartless Cartman is. And that disbelief is what drives his journey for the rest of this episode.
Cartman is the biggest asshole in the world. How is it that God gives him $1 million? Come on, we gotta see what Cartman is doing with his money. Why? How could you do this? There are people starving in Alabama and you give Cartman $1 million?
Now we're gonna get into this more a little later, but I just want to lay this down here first. Kyle's struggle in this episode is a struggle with God. There's no way around that. And it has everything to do with his worldview and his sense of identity, because both are so intrinsically linked to his ideas about God and morality, which is a topic I'm excited to get into more as we progress further into this episode. But for now, I just think it's funny as hell that the thing to push him into that struggle is Cartman getting $1 million. Cause like there are so many bad things that happened in the world at this time. You know, there's war and poverty and terrible people running society. The absolute butchering of Weezer's sound on the Green album, especially those goddamn verse melody excuses for guitar solos. But it's Cartman getting rich that really does it for Kyle. And that's hilarious.
And if we can just get you to sign here and here.
Wait. Isn't that the investment broker guy from the last scene? Damn, he's busy. And he got here real fast. I'm impressed. Anyways, I'm sure we totally won't be seeing him again at any point in this episode.
Look, I haven't been honest with you. The park hasn't been doing great business.
Frank, shh.
It ain't right, Chris. The truth is, the park is a financial flop.
Oh, but I'm not buying the park to get people to come.
You're not?
No. I'm buying it to keep people out.
So this is where we get our big reveal for what Cartman is gonna do with the money. He's gonna buy a theme park and kick everyone out. The crazy bastard. I love how even in this small scene where Cartman is interacting with a one-off character that we may as well never see again, they stay super consistent with the framing. Like this Frank guy who's trying to sell his park to Cartman. He doesn't have to be honest about the declining sales, but he chooses to say something because he believes it's the right thing to do, which is an interesting bit of characterization, but we're not getting that dialogue because South Park wants us to think about Frank as a character. From a writing perspective, that dialogue only exists for two reasons. It's to give Cartman the opportunity to explain his bizarre, twisted plan for the park, and to act as yet another point of contrast between a normal person and Cartman's insane levels of selfishness.
I love theme parks, but the lines, everywhere you go, people, crowds, the rides are great, but all the lines, and then there get to be so many people that they make Fast Pass. So then there's lines for Fast Pass. You stand in line to get a ticket to stand in line later.
This line speech has lived rent-free in my head since I first saw it as a kid. Cause like any normal person, I also hate lines. They suck, they're boring, and I swear my local theme park has only gotten worse with them over the years. OG fans of Canada's Wonderland will know what I'm talking about. Used to have way smaller lines in the early 2000s. And so naturally, I think this speech does a lot to humanize Cartman, because I imagine that most people would relate to his hatred of lines. It's a pretty universal grievance. Plus, this is obviously just Trey and Matt's way of using the show to complain about something they don't like. But I think that beyond all that, it also adds an important element of nuance to the story here. Because this is not just Cartman's motivation in the episode, it's also his Achilles heel. It's his biggest weakness, which is going to be crucial for the second and third acts of this story. Without it, Cartman would just continue to be an unstoppable force for the entirety of the episode. But this way, we're able to get the best of both worlds. They make him feel unstoppable in this first act, while simultaneously giving us the seeds of his undoing for everything that comes after. And in my personal opinion, I think that second half of the episode is way funnier.
Do you know what happened to me this morning, Stan? I have a hemorrhoid. It's like an infected blood vessel on your ass. I'm 9 years old, and I have a hemorrhoid, Stan. I have a hemorrhoid, and Cartman has his own theme park.
Man, I really wanted to show the whole clip here, but it's just so goddamn long, and I'm just so goddamn tired of YouTube's automated copyright system, so we're gonna have to make do with what we got here. Now, before we get into any deep sort of analysis here, I gotta ask, did anyone else watch this episode as a kid and think that hemorrhoids were like some sort of life-threatening condition? Because I sure did. The way Kyle talks about it here is so serious and crushing that you'd think having a hemorrhoid would be a way bigger deal than it actually is. Anyways, earlier I mentioned that Kyle's struggle in this episode is a struggle with God, which is evidenced by the fact that he's chosen to come to a synagogue in his time of need. And what I find so interesting about this is that this episode is the first time that the show has given Kyle a reason for being the moral center of the group. In the past, it was kind of just who he was. There was no explanation, we just understood it as an inherent character trait of his. But here, we learned that it comes down to his fundamental understanding of the world. He believes in God, and that God will punish the wicked and bless the righteous, or whatever. That seems to be a primary motivator for him wanting to do the right thing, for him being the one associated with learning the lesson at the end of each episode. Though if we're being completely honest, seasons 1 to 4 Kyle wasn't always the beacon of virtue that he tends to be today. He did some but season 5 really started to solidify that element of Kyle's character, and I think that this episode played a major role in making that happen, because it explains to us that it comes from his religious views. That's why he can't reconcile that he got a hemorrhoid and Cartman got a theme park, because it goes against everything that he believes in.
Because all my life, I was raised to believe in Jehovah, to believe that we should all behave a certain way and good things will come to us. I'm always saying, you know, I learned something today, and what does this so-called God give me in return? A hemorrhoid.
It's times like this where I'm always so impressed by how serious South Park can feel, while simultaneously being such a goofy show. Cause Kyle's tear-filled speech just hits the emotions. You see the way that tear rolled down his eye? They don't just do that very often in old South Park, okay? Usually you just get the watery eye thing and that's it. So, they went all out for Kyle. He got a whole tear. But yeah, I feel like this speech could resonate with anyone who was raised to believe in God while forced to reconcile with the brutality of the world. Cause I mean, sure, some people just hand wave things away with God works in mysterious ways, but others have doubts. They have such doubts. Like, I've personally met people who went from church-going Christians to depressed atheists because they realized how much suffering there is in the world and it gave them an existential crisis. So I feel like that relatability is what really makes Kyle's arc in this episode so great. Because Cartman getting a theme park makes so little sense to him that it's challenging his core beliefs and his understanding of reality, which basically means that it's challenging his identity. Because how is Kyle supposed to know how to act when the world makes so little sense? It's like he's being attacked from the inside, which is exactly what the hemorrhoid represents. Now that his world is falling apart, his body is following suit, which I'm sure is totally exactly how this episode was meant to be read, and is not just me overanalyzing the shit out of things because it's fun to talk about for a living. Yeah, that's right, boys and girls. We're getting real deep with this South Park episode. Strap in.
Check out the all-new Cartmanland. It's our grand opening. Cartmanland has over 100 fabulous rides, and the best part is, you can't come. Especially Stan and Kyle. Ha ha ha.
Yes, once again, I know. I skipped the funny little montage of Cartman loving the theme park. We didn't get to watch him have a blast on the haunted ride. Look, I gotta pick and choose my clips carefully, okay? Can't let this video turn into a replacement for the actual episode. Besides, what did you want me to say about it anyway? The Cartman is so deranged that he actually can have fun at a theme park all by himself? Or that he's so full of darkness and evil that he actually enjoys a merry-go-round after the age of 6? Please, there's no way I'd grace you with that kind of commentary. I would never sneak it into a bit like this to kill two birds with one stone, especially when I could be talking about the real important stuff, like how crazy it is that Cartman just jumped into a log ride train right before it went down a hill. Pro's got some serious balls for that one. Okay, fine, I guess it's worth mentioning that it's pretty in character for Cartman to enjoy this park on his own. I mean, since he's an only child, and we've seen time and time again that he's pretty good at entertaining himself, and I do like that consistency. Anyways, this commercial is obviously one of the best bits from this first half of the episode, where Cartman is getting everything he wants. Because I mean, just look at him. He's so happy rubbing it in everyone's faces, especially Stan and Kyle. And he succeeded in his goal. He got a rise out of them while also having the time of his life. This is almost where he peaks in this episode. And the only reason I say almost is because I'd argue that from Cartman's perspective, what happens next would probably please him more than anything in the world.
What the hell are you doing? Oh, crap. Oh, God, get me off of here. Dude. Stan, I have to go home. I need my cream. I need my cream.
Now this is where Cartman peaks. Because having Stan and Kyle try to break into his park and fail, and Kyle gets injured because of it, you just know that Cartman loved that. I mean, he's obviously pissed at the idea of anyone trying to sneak in, but this is like the ultimate win for him. His biggest haters are literally seething because they can't enjoy his theme park, and Kyle needs his cream. But at the same time, his greatest victory is also the point where it all starts to fall apart, which I'm gonna conveniently explain by borrowing theme park imagery. Because you see, if Cartman was on a roller coaster, he'd be at the top of the hill right now. Doesn't get any higher than this, he's literally at the peak. But that also means that this is the exact moment where things start to go downhill for him. Because getting what he wanted, getting that rise out of Stan and Kyle, it poked the first hole in his dream, which is the realization that his theme park isn't safe from intruders. Cartman needs security. And the way that kicks off a chain of events that eventually leads to his downfall is so well structured. Like the way it starts small, but then it snowballs into something bigger as the episode goes on, makes the pacing of this episode consistently rewarding.
Every day you can just let 2 people in, charge $29.95 for their tickets, and then you can use that to pay my daily salary.
2 people?
Okay, pop quiz. Which episode is this security guard from? Was it Rainforest? Tooth Fairy Tats? Officer Bob Brady? Yes, that's right. It was none of those, because this security guard's previous appearance was in Something You Can Do With Your Finger, where he played a mall cop that really liked to abuse his pepper spray.
Now move along, sir.
But we practiced for days. All we want to do is show the guy what we can do, so that maybe we'll have a chance to perform in the plaza of the...
Foreshadowing for later? Much like with the line's speech, this sequence has also lived in my head rent-free since I first saw it. Probably because I was like 12 at the time and the concept of covering business expenses had never been laid out to me in such simple terms before. Well, that or it reminded me of Roller Coaster Tycoon. But either way, I think that this was such a great direction to go in for Eric's story. Watching him have fun at his theme park alone is amusing at first, but it would get pretty old if that was all we got. But the whole letting people in to keep the park running element ends up being such a fun way to derail his joy. It's a really nice twist for the overall premise that plays directly into his rage about lines. And the fact that it's so logical and realistic just makes the whole thing that much more satisfying. Because it doesn't feel like Cartman's downfall is something that just happens out of convenience. It feels like something that actually would happen, which in my opinion goes a long way for making the story more compelling.
A few moments later.
There's no God, dude.
Kyle, don't say such things.
Why? Why, Mom? Because if I do, something bad will happen to me? Because if I do, your God might not shower me with his blessings of infected hemorrhoids? I finally do understand. There is no God. Do you hear me? I renounce my faith.
The phrase, shower me with his blessings of infected hemorrhoids, is just so good. Now, I couldn't fit this into the clip, but I think that it's important, so I'm just gonna mention it here. We learn at the start of this scene that Kyle's hemorrhoid is now so infected that it could have killed him. So he basically just barely survived that attempt to sneak into Cartmanland, which I think adds extra weight to him denouncing his faith. Because at this point, it could not be more clear to Kyle that his God has forsaken him. Like, his ideas about reality aren't just being challenged, they're shattered into pieces. And with them, so is Kyle's sense of self. Because without God, without justice and morality, who is Kyle? Renouncing his faith leaves him no way to understand the world around him, for him to understand himself. And faith is a very important thing. Not necessarily in the believing in God sense, but like in the having something to believe sense. Losing that is like losing all hope. It's the ultimate shortcut to depression, and that's exactly what's happening to Kyle here.
Can't you go on something else right now? We want to see the spook house. Well, we pay $29.95. We should be able to go in the spook house. Yeah, but I think it's broke down. The cars aren't moving. All right, hang on.
Okay, so this part has always really confused me because, like, who exactly starts the rides here, you know? Like, if Cartman didn't show up, would they be able to get on any rides? Are they expected to start the rides themselves and just hop on? I mean, I know that's what Cartman's been doing, but, like, it's his theme park. I can give that a pass. But I don't know. Expecting them to start their own rides just seems like a terrible idea to me. Seems like a lawsuit waiting to happen. Anyways, the important thing here is that Butters and Clyde are apparently friends. Yeah, that's the real twist right there. I mean, I know that Butters is kind of friends with like everyone, but you gotta admit, it's a pretty rare pairing. Straight up might just be the first time in the entire series that we see them together.
I'm security, not maintenance.
But I don't know how it works.
Well, your rides are gonna break down every now and then. You need to hire a maintenance person.
All right. I'll let 2 more people in each day so I can hire a maintenance person.
So I'm not going to dwell on this for too long, because I already talked about how the derailing of Cartman's dream snowballs from here on out. But I wanted to show this clip anyways because it so effectively demonstrates the never-ending chain of events that leads to a park full of people, and it's just done in such a brilliant way. Like, of course it wouldn't just end with 2 people per day entering the park to pay off the security guy's wages. There's going to be more to do, more to maintain, more employees. And those people are going to create an entirely new set of problems that need to be dealt with. They're going to use bathrooms, they're gonna get hungry, they're gonna get injured. And I just felt like it was important for me to show a bit more of that process here, so you can see what I mean when I say that Cartman's downfall feels well earned in this episode. There's just a really well thought out and realistic flow to the events of this story, and it makes each check-in with Cartman that much more entertaining.
Kyle, we want to tell you about the Book of Job. It's a story from the Bible.
I've heard enough of the Bible. What has it gotten me?
Oh, I think you'll see differently after hearing this. Sit down, Kyle. Okay.
Gerald telling Kyle to sit down for the Book of Job story is absolutely diabolical. Low-key one of the best jokes in the entire episode. Now, I can't go through the entire clip here because it's super long, and there's just no way I can get away with putting that in a YouTube video, but it's actually one of the most important parts of this episode, so I'm just gonna do my best to summarize it. Basically, in the Bible, Job is this amazing, upstanding, moral man that is kind to everyone and has a big family with a wife and many kids and many friends, and he's like the most devout, godly type person you could ever find, with many blessings to show for it. But one day, Satan tells God that the only reason Job praises him and is so devoted to him is because God gave him so many blessings. So to prove a point to Satan, God takes away those blessings. A storm kills his wife and kids, destroys his home, riddles him with disease. God really just up his life in every way possible. But in the end, even after all that happens, Job continues to pray to God and maintains his faith. And God says to Satan, "See, I told you, he still praises me." And they just stop the story there, to which Kyle rightfully reacts with,
Why would God do such horrible things to a good person just to prove a point to Satan? And I was right. Job has all his children killed, and Michael Bay gets to keep making movies. There isn't a God.
Now, I talked about this a little in my South Park vs. Religion video, so forgive me if there's a little bit of overlap here, but as hilarious as Kyle's reaction is to this ridiculous story that his parents read him, that's not actually how the Book of Job ends. Because in the actual story, God rewards Job for keeping his faith by giving him a new family and new fortunes. In fact, I'm pretty sure he gets double the fortunes he previously had. And I think that's a really important distinction to highlight because Kyle's parents did him dirty. No wonder he lost all hope. Their version of the story sucks ass. They literally clip-chimped the Bible. But anyways, the reason I think that the Book of Job is really important to this episode is because Kyle's story in many ways mirrors it. Only instead of it happening through God, it all happens through a rational lens. I mean, think about it. Instead of losing his family and fortunes, Kyle loses his sense of self because of what happens with Cartman. And instead of having it returned to him through a miracle, Cartman's undoing is entirely logical and grounded. Now, granted, Kyle doesn't keep his faith and Job does, so there's definitely a major difference there, but both stories seem to emphasize the value of faith. Only Kyle's story tends more towards karmic balance, where the Bible story focuses more on believing in God. But in my opinion, the South Park version is way more digestible to a modern audience, and it still maintains a similar level of depth to it. This is, at the end of the day, a story that teaches us the importance of having faith, of believing. It's just doing it in a very South Parky way. Anyways, I'm getting way too deep into the weeds again with all this God and faith stuff, when all I'm really trying to say is that I think this episode is pretty tits.
In just over 2 weeks, young financial genius Eric Cartman has managed to turn a theme park that was seeing less than 100 attendees a day into a thriving park with attendance in the thousands.
And the way he did it was with the brilliant "you can't come" technique.
Okay, I lied. There is an act of God in this episode, because what are the gods that this exact show would be playing in the hospital on Kyle's TV? Forget all my previous analysis. God wants to kill Kyle, that fly-eating bastard. Anyways, I'm sure you already know that I love this bit, because it's such a good bit. I mean, for one, the concept alone that Cartman is being looked at as a marketing genius is hilarious to me, but the fact that it's completely unintentional and literally only happening because he's such a selfish bastard, that really pushes the joke up a tier. Plus, it works on so many levels, because Cartman doesn't want to be successful, so he hates the very thing that he's being revered for. And for Kyle, it's like the worst possible thing that he could have imagined. It's like a dump truck of salt pouring straight into his popped hemorrhoid. Just truly an incredible escalation of both storylines at the exact same time. Such great South Park writing. And that's not even the funniest part of this TV segment, which in my opinion is what we see all the other businesses try to copy Cartman's success with the same "you can't come" strategy.
You can't see this movie. Nobody can see this movie. I can't even go in. Ow! Nobody's allowed in the Gracies anymore. Get out of here!
Wait, what the crap? What the hell are you doing here, Chris? Are you trying to tell me that you're an investment broker? That you work for Frank? And you own the Gracies? Am I really supposed to buy that? Huh? Also, what happened to your voice, Chris? I'm gonna need some answers. Don't make me use this gun.
Eric Cartman is surely the financial genius of our time.
Kyle? Kyle? Get the doctor!
That last line was really the final nail in the coffin for him, eh? Eric Cartman is the financial genius of our time. I love this episode. Kind of reminds me of the one in season 6 when they gave Cartman a freaking medal for discovering that you could poop out your mouth. But of course, in that episode, Kyle eventually learned to not react in the way that Cartman wants him to, which took away his power over him. Here, that just doesn't work because Kyle's issue isn't with Cartman, Kyle's issue is with the universe, which is why he flatlined, because he's just straight up done with the world. Truly one of the most traumatic episodes in the show.
Congratulations on your success.
I changed my mind. I don't want your stupid park.
But it's doing great.
You call this great? I call it hell. Trade me back, goddammit!
You bet. I'll go get your money right now.
Chris. Thought you'd know better than to show your face around here again. Man, I get that Cartman hates lines and all, but goddamn, how dumb do you have to be to not want all the money that comes from this park? You're rich, bro. You could probably rent any park for a day and have the whole thing to yourself if you really wanted. Actually, scratch that. I'm probably overestimating how much of this is profit. But yeah, Cartman's decision here is really dumb. But it's dumb in a good way, because up until this point, everything good that's happened to him has been a result of his major flaws as a person. His selfishness, his unhinged emotions. These have all led to him having his own theme park, because we've been in like some kind of bizarro world or something. But now, reality is hitting. He's not enjoying the park anymore. It's filled with kids. It killed Kenny. Well, he probably doesn't care about that last part. But the point is that the very same selfishness that led to him having the money to buy this park is now causing him to make the worst business decision of his life. Finally, his flaws are catching up to him. They're working against him. The bad karma is doing its thing. And I just think that that's a very poetic way for things to come around as this episode comes to a close.
I'm Frank Garrett with the IRS. You haven't kept records of your income or payout, and there's a $500,000 discrepancy.
Hey, that's my money!
There's also the lawsuit of the little boy who died in your park. The family's entitled to the rest of this.
What, Kenny? He dies all the time!
Okay, so look, I'm all for Eric's downfall. I think it's very funny, but would the IRS really come after him for like 1 week's worth of business? And wouldn't the lawsuit be with the theme park, not Cartman personally? And doesn't a lawsuit have to actually take place first before they go grabbing his money? And wouldn't Eric be able to skip any lines he wants anyway since it's his park? I mean, I know it's a cartoon, but I'm just saying, pretty convenient of the story for all that to just happen. That's gotta be my one gripe. Every time I do one of these videos, there's always one gripe I have, and I'm saying it now, I choose this. Anyways, this ending is a big part of why I feel like this is more of a Kyle episode than a Cartman episode, because Kyle actually goes through a journey here that ends with him learning something. There's a real struggle and a lesson at the end of it. Whereas with Eric, he kind of just starts off as a rotten kid and then ends as a rotten kid. So it's sort of like how Breast Cancer Show feels more like a Wendy episode. But to be fair, that lack of character development is exactly what makes his downfall so satisfying, because you can't help but feel like he deserves it.
I'm so pissed off!
Move along, sir. You're vandalizing private property.
Hey, you used to work for me! God damn it, you son of a bitch!
Now, given that Kyle is mostly incapacitated here, I'm just gonna do his job for him. Cause you know, I've learned something today. You see, expecting the world to always follow a clean-cut pattern of rewarding the good and punishing the bad isn't realistic. The truth is, things are always in a constant state of flux, and we can't always predict how the future will look. But if we maintain our faith in the importance of being a good person, then eventually, things will find their balance. Just, don't think about all the good people who suffer for no reason, and all the bad people who have it good.
Yeah.
Okay, so maybe that's a little too idealistic, but at the end of the day, this is an episode with an optimistic ending, because seeing Cartman finally suffer, and he really suffers because he had it all and he lost it, that restores Kyle's faith in God and his belief in goodness. In fact, you could say that his faith is twice as strong now than it was at the beginning of all this, just like how Job had his fortunes doubled at the end of his story. Huh? But yeah, I do think that there really is a valuable message here, even if it is idealistic, because it is worth being good, even if sometimes bad things happen to good people and vice versa. Like, I don't know about all the God stuff, that's not really my thing, but I do believe in the power of putting good energy out into the universe, making the world better for the people around you. That's something that I personally have faith in, and I feel like my life is better because of it. So there is a real wisdom in Kyle's journey that makes this one of the deeper South Park episodes in my opinion. But more importantly, this is just a really great ending to the episode in general. It's satisfying, it's funny, it ties everything together very neatly, and of course, it brings things back to the status quo in a way that feels earned and well thought out. Yeah, maybe there was a little bit of convenience at the very end there, but for the most part, this is an episode that knows exactly what it's doing, gets there in a very fair way, and wastes absolutely no time doing it. So yeah, it's one of the most tightly written South Park episodes in the entire series, one of the best Kyle stories, and one of the funniest Cartman L's of all time. So all around, 10 out of 10, perfect episode.
Cartman is totally miserable, even more miserable than he was before because he's had his dream and lost it. It's not fair! It's not fair! I wanna die! I wanna die! You are up there.